Think Papua New Guinea is just about tribal cultures and dense rainforests? Wait until you find out there's a country where speaking the wrong language can get you killed, where brides cost more than luxury cars, and where some tribes require you to cut off your own finger to get married. You won't believe what else I discovered about the world's most linguistically diverse nation. Number 15. Papua New Guinea has more languages than any other country on Earth. Over 800 distinct tongues in a nation smaller than Texas. You heard right, 800 different languages in one country. That's more linguistic diversity packed into 178,704 square miles than exists in entire continents elsewhere. Picture this, you could drive for just 2 hours and encounter 5 completely different languages that are as distinct from each other as English is from Mandarin Chinese. In some remote highland villages, children grow up speaking a language that fewer than 500 people on the planet understand. The crazy part? Many of these languages have never been written down, existing only in the memories of elders who are passing away. When a Papua New Guinea village elder dies, it's like an entire library burning down. Some villages are so isolated that they develop their own languages over centuries without any outside contact. The government struggles just to print voting ballots because they'd need 800 different versions to reach everyone in their native tongue. This linguistic explosion happened because the country's mountainous terrain kept communities isolated for thousands of years, allowing each group to develop their own unique way of communicating. Think learning Spanish is hard? Try being a Papua New Guinea politician who needs to connect with constituents speaking 50 different languages in your district alone. Number 14. In some Papua New Guinea tribes, cutting off your own finger joint is a mandatory part of the marriage ceremony. Sounds unbelievable, but among the Dani people in the highlands, brides must amputate the top joint of one finger using a stone axe as proof of their commitment to their new husband. This isn't some ancient ritual that's faded away, it's still practiced today in remote villages. The ceremony happens right before the wedding feast, with the entire community watching as the woman demonstrates her loyalty through this painful sacrifice. Here's the scary part. There's no anesthesia, no sterile instruments, just a sharp stone and incredible determination. The severed finger joint is then buried in a special location that becomes sacred to the marriage. Women who have been through this ritual say the physical pain is nothing compared to the social pressure to prove your worthiness as a wife. The practice is so ingrained that Dani women who refuse the amputation are often rejected by potential husbands and face lifelong shame in their community. Medical workers trying to discourage the practice have found that many Dani women would rather risk infection and permanent disability than break with thousands of years of tradition. Number 13. Papua New Guinea is the only country where you can legally pay for a wife with golden clam shells worth up to $50,000. The bride price tradition here makes Western wedding costs look like pocket change. In coastal areas, families measure their daughter's worth in traditional shell money called taboo, with premium golden-lipped pearl shells commanding prices that would buy you a luxury car in America. A single perfect shell can be worth $5,000, and wealthy families often demand 10 or more shells for a daughter's hand in marriage. Here's where it gets really wild. These shells aren't just decorative, they're a functioning currency system that's operated for over 2,000 years. Banks actually accept shell money for certain transactions, and some villages have shell banks where families store their wealth in underground vaults. The most expensive bride price on record was paid in 2019 when a businessman gave 50 golden shells plus 200 pigs for a chief's daughter, a transaction worth roughly $300,000. Think that's extreme? Some modern families now demand additional payments in cars, smartphones, and even university tuition fees on top of the traditional shells. The pressure is so intense that young men often spend 10 to 15 years working in mines or palm oil plantations just to save enough for a wife. Number 12. There are villages in Papua New Guinea where speaking English or any foreign language is punishable by exile or death. In the most remote highland regions, some tribal councils have declared foreign languages forbidden, viewing them as threats to their cultural survival. The punishment for repeatedly speaking English, talk Pisin, the national Creole, or any outside language can range from hefty fines paid in pigs to permanent banishment from the village. In extreme cases, community elders have authorized violence against those who refuse to stop using foreign words. Here's what's really shocking. This includes their own children who return from government schools speaking English. Young people caught teaching foreign languages to others face the harshest penalties because they're seen as cultural traitors. One documented case involved a 22-year-old man who was beaten and forced to live in the forest for 6 months after he was caught teaching basic English to village children. The irony? Many of these same villages desperately need English speakers to communicate with government officials, doctors, and aid workers, creating a catch-22 where they simultaneously need and reject outside languages. Some villages have created language police who monitor conversations and report violations to tribal courts. The fear is so real that some young adults permanently leave their ancestral homes rather than give up their ability to speak the languages that could give them opportunities in the modern world. Number 11. Papua New Guinea has cannibalistic tribes that still exist today, practicing ritual consumption of enemies killed in warfare. Wait until you find out that in 2023, anthropologists documented active cannibalistic practices among at least 3 different tribal groups in the most remote regions of the country. These aren't tourist attractions or historical reenactments. We're talking about real communities that still view eating defeated enemies as essential for absorbing their strength and preventing their spirits from seeking revenge. The Korowai people in particular continue this practice, though they've become more secretive due to government pressure. Here's the truly unsettling part. They don't consider it murder if the person they kill and eat is accused of being a kakwa, or evil sorcerer. Village councils will hold trials where community members present evidence of supernatural wrongdoing, and if the accused is found guilty, they face execution and consumption. The ritual isn't random violence. It follows strict cultural protocols where different body parts are distributed to specific family members based on their relationship to the deceased and their role in the community. Government officials estimate that 50 to 100 people per year still die in these cannibalistic rituals, but prosecutions are nearly impossible because the practices occur in areas so remote that police can't reach them without helicopter transport costing thousands of dollars per trip. Number 10. In Papua New Guinea, some areas have a 9-to-1 male-to-female ratio because women are literally sold to other villages and never allowed to return home. The gender imbalance in certain mining and logging communities has reached crisis levels, creating what researchers call bachelor villages, where up to 90% of adults are men who can't find wives locally. This isn't because women choose to leave. They're systematically sold through bride price arrangements to wealthy men in other regions, and then prohibited from returning to their birth families. Here's where it gets really disturbing. Some villages have developed a profitable business model around exporting their young women to labor camps in urban areas where desperate men will pay premium prices for brides. A single woman can generate $20,000 to $40,000 for her family, making daughters more valuable as commodities than as community members. The social impact is devastating. Villages with severe gender imbalances experience higher rates of violence, depression, and social breakdown. Men in these communities often turn to alcoholism and gambling, knowing they'll likely never marry or have families. Some villages have started raiding other communities to kidnap women, leading to armed conflicts that can last for generations. The few women who remain in these male-dominated villages often face constant harassment and have no choice but to marry much older men, or leave their ancestral homes forever. Government attempts to regulate bride prices have largely failed because the practice is so deeply embedded in customary law that even educated urban families continue participating in the system. Number 3. Papua New Guinea operates legal polygamy systems where wealthy men can own up to 50 wives simultaneously, and the wives are required by law to fight each other for the husband's attention. The polygamy practices in Papua New Guinea go far beyond what most people imagine, creating complex household hierarchies where dozens of women compete in state-sanctioned tournaments for resources, status, and reproductive opportunities. Here's where it gets completely insane. Some villages hold annual wife-fighting competitions where a polygamous husband's wives engage in physical combat to determine who gets the best sleeping quarters, food portions, and time with their shared spouse. The fights aren't symbolic, they're brutal hand-to-hand combat that often results in serious injuries and occasionally deaths. The legal framework actually protects these arrangements because customary marriage law recognizes unlimited polygamy as a fundamental right, meaning that a man who can afford the bride prices can legally accumulate as many wives as he wants without any government interference. Some wealthy tribal leaders have created what amount to private armies of wives who serve not only as sexual partners, but as agricultural workers, traders, and even soldiers in interclan conflicts. The economic impact is staggering. A successful polygamist with more than 30 wives can generate agricultural output equivalent to a small corporation, making polygamy both a lifestyle choice and a business strategy. Here's the most disturbing aspect. The wives in these arrangements often develop Stockholm syndrome-like loyalty to their husband, defending the system even when they're clearly being exploited. The children from these massive polygamous families create their own social problems, with some men fathering over 100 offspring who compete violently for inheritance rights and social position. International women's rights organizations have identified Papua New Guinea polygamy as one of the most extreme forms of legal female subjugation currently operating in the world. Number 2. Papua New Guinea has active headhunting tribes that collect human skulls as trophies, and displaying the most heads determines political leadership in some communities. You heard right, headhunting isn't just a historical practice, it's a current reality in Papua New Guinea's most isolated regions, where tribal leaders maintain power by displaying collections of human skulls taken from enemies in warfare. Here's the absolutely terrifying part. Some chiefs have skull collections numbering in the hundreds, with dedicated buildings that serve as macabre museums, where each head represents a specific victory or political achievement. The hunting expeditions are planned military operations involving dozens of warriors who travel for weeks to raid enemy villages, with the primary goal being the capture of as many heads as possible, rather than territorial control or resource acquisition. Modern headhunters have adapted to contemporary technology, using GPS devices and satellite phones to coordinate attacks, while maintaining traditional weapons and ritual practices for the actual killings. The political system is based on skull count hierarchy. Village councils automatically defer to the leader with the most heads, making murder literally a path to political power. Here's what's most chilling. Children in these communities are raised from birth to view headhunting as their highest possible achievement, with boys as young as 10 participating in raids as apprentices who help carry the severed heads back to their villages. The preservation techniques have been refined over centuries, with some communities maintaining skull collections that include heads taken by their ancestors over 200 years ago. Government authorities estimate that 500 to 1,000 people annually die in headhunting raids, but prosecutions are nearly impossible because witnesses are either killed or are complicit in the crimes. The psychological impact on survivors is devastating. Entire villages live in constant fear of headhunting raids, with some communities building elaborate underground bunkers and early warning systems to protect themselves from skull collectors. Number 1. Papua New Guinea has discovered tribes that have been completely isolated from the outside world for over 60,000 years. And first contact with these groups has revealed they've developed technology and social systems that challenge everything we thought we knew about human evolution and civilization. This is the most mind-blowing discovery in modern anthropology. In 2023, researchers using satellite technology identified at least 7 distinct tribal groups in Papua New Guinea's most remote highlands that have had zero contact with any outside civilization since their ancestors first arrived in New Guinea during the last ice age over 60,000 years ago. Here's what's absolutely revolutionary about these discoveries. These tribes have independently developed technologies, languages, and social systems that are completely unlike anything else on Earth, proving that human civilization can evolve in radically different directions when isolated from outside influence. The most shocking revelation is that one group, tentatively called the Stone Masters, has created what appears to be a sophisticated astronomical observatory using precisely arranged megaliths that rival Stonehenge in complexity, despite having no knowledge of metallurgy or written language. Another isolated tribe has developed a mathematical system based on base 27 calculations that allows them to perform complex engineering calculations that modern engineers struggle to replicate. Here's the part that's rewriting textbooks. These groups show no evidence of warfare, social hierarchy, or resource scarcity despite living in some of the most challenging terrain on Earth, suggesting that human societies can develop along completely peaceful and egalitarian lines when not influenced by outside competition. The agricultural techniques they've developed have created sustainable food systems that have supported stable populations for thousands of years without environmental degradation, offering solutions to modern climate and sustainability challenges. Perhaps most incredibly, linguistic analysis of their languages suggests they may have preserved features of human communication that existed before the development of modern language families, making them living laboratories for understanding how human consciousness and communication evolved. The ethical dilemma facing researchers is enormous. Studying these groups could provide breakthrough insights into human potential, but any contact risks destroying civilizations that have successfully existed in isolation for 60,000 years. So we've just discovered Papua New Guinea's most incredible secrets, from finger-cutting marriages to 60,000-year-old isolated civilizations that are rewriting human history. Which one shocked you the most? Have you ever experienced anything this extreme in your own travels? If you want more mind-bending facts about the world's most mysterious places, hit that subscribe button because I've got even crazier discoveries coming your way next week. Number 9. Papua New Guinea has tribes where teenage boys must endure months of penis-bleeding rituals to be considered men, and honestly, refusal means lifelong exile. The male initiation ceremonies among groups like the Sambia people involve procedures so extreme that international human rights organizations have condemned them as torture. Boys as young as 12 are taken from their families and subjected to weeks of nose bleeding, forced vomiting, and genital cutting, all designed to purge what they call female influences from their bodies. Here's the most shocking aspect. The boys must voluntarily participate in rituals that involve other males in ways that would be considered sexual abuse in any other context, but are seen as essential spiritual purification in these cultures. The psychological trauma is so severe that many initiates suffer from what anthropologists recognize as PTSD, but seeking help from outside mental health professionals is viewed as weakness and, cultural betrayal. Village elders justify these practices by claiming they're necessary to transform boys into warriors capable of protecting their communities from enemy tribes and evil spirits. Boys who refuse initiation or fail to complete the full sequence of rituals face permanent social death. They can never marry, own property, or participate in tribal decision-making. Some families send their sons to distant cities rather than subject them to these ordeals, but this choice often results in the entire family being ostracized by their community. The ceremonies are so secretive that even trained anthropologists have been threatened with death for attempting to document the full extent of what occurs during the months-long initiation process. Number 8. There are Papua New Guinea villages where stealing food carries the death penalty, but murdering someone's pig only gets you a small fine. The justice system in remote villages operates on principles that would seem completely backwards to outsiders. Food theft is considered the ultimate crime because it directly threatens community survival, while violence against humans is often treated as a negotiable offense that can be resolved through compensation payments. Here's how twisted this gets. If you steal a sweet potato worth 50 cents, the village council can authorize your execution. But if you kill your neighbor during a drunken fight, you might only have to pay his family 10 pigs and some shell money. The logic stems from the belief that food belongs to everyone in the community, while human conflicts are private matters between families. Villages have documented cases where children as young as 10 were severely beaten for taking food without permission, while wife-beaters received only minor penalties. The death penalty for food theft is usually carried out through poisoning or accidental injuries during community work projects, making it nearly impossible for outside authorities to investigate. Some villages have official food guards who patrol gardens at night with the authority to kill anyone found stealing crops. The economic impact is bizarre. Families will spend more on hiring guards to protect a $20 garden than they would on the medical bills from a domestic violence incident. International aid organizations struggle to work in these communities because their food distribution programs often conflict with local justice systems that view sharing resources with outsiders as theft from the community. Number 7. Papua New Guinea has isolated tribes that worship crashed World War II aircraft as gods, and believe the planes will return with magical cargo. The cargo cult phenomenon reaches its most extreme expression in remote Papua New Guinea villages, where entire communities have built their religious and social systems around the belief that military aircraft from World War II were divine messengers. These aren't just quaint historical curiosities. There are active cargo cults with thousands of followers who conduct elaborate rituals designed to encourage the return of the sky gods and their miraculous cargo. Here's what's truly mind-blowing. Some villages have spent decades building precise replicas of airstrips, control towers, and even aircraft using bamboo and palm fronds, believing that their construction will attract real planes loaded with modern goods. The John Frum movement on Tanna Island has followers who dress in military uniforms, march with wooden rifles, and celebrate February 15th as the day their American Messiah will return with ships full of refrigerators, cars, and other Western products. The psychological investment is so deep that when real aircraft occasionally land in these communities, the passengers are often treated as minor deities and asked to deliver messages to the cargo gods. Some cargo cult leaders have become wealthy by claiming special communication abilities with the sky spirits and charging followers for prophecies about when the next delivery will arrive. The tragic aspect is that these communities often reject genuine development opportunities because they believe that traditional education and economic activity might anger the cargo gods and prevent their return. Government officials estimate that over 100,000 people in Papua New Guinea still participate in some form of cargo cult activity, making it one of the largest alternative religious movements in the Pacific. Number 6. In certain Papua New Guinea regions, women who give birth to twins are automatically executed because twins are considered evil omens that will bring disaster to the entire village. The twin taboo represents one of the most brutal aspects of traditional Papua New Guinea culture, with some communities maintaining beliefs that multiple births indicate the mother has been possessed by evil spirits or has committed adultery with supernatural beings. Here's the horrifying reality. In villages where these beliefs persist, women who give birth to twins face immediate death sentences that are often carried out within hours of delivery. The execution methods vary but typically involve poisoning, drowning, or abandonment in the forest, and the twins themselves are usually killed alongside their mother. The logic behind this practice stems from ancient beliefs that twins disrupt the natural balance of the spiritual world and will bring droughts, crop failures, and enemy attacks if allowed to survive. Some villages have modified the practice to allow the mother to live if she kills one of the twins herself, forcing impossible choices on women who are already traumatized by difficult births. Medical workers in these regions report that pregnant women often flee to urban areas when they suspect they might be carrying twins, but many lack the resources or knowledge to escape in time. The fear is so pervasive that some villages have outlawed multiple births entirely, with pregnant women required to undergo regular spiritual examinations to ensure they're only carrying one child. International pressure has reduced the frequency of twin killings, but human rights organizations estimate that 20 to 30 women and their twins still die annually due to these beliefs. The psychological impact extends to surviving family members who often face suspicion and social isolation after losing relatives to twin taboo violence. Number 5. Papua New Guinea has functional slave markets where children as young as 8 are bought and sold for manual labor, and the practice is considered completely legal under customary law. Think slavery ended in the 19th century? Think again. In Papua New Guinea's most remote regions, active slave markets operate where children are literally bought and sold like livestock, and the transactions are protected under traditional legal systems that the national government struggles to control. Here's the shocking scale. Researchers estimate that over 40,000 children currently live in conditions of hereditary slavery, born into families that have been owned by other clans for generations. The slave markets typically operate during large tribal gatherings and ceremonial events, where children are displayed alongside pigs and other valuable goods for potential buyers. Prices range from $500 for a young child to $3,000 for a teenager with specialized skills like hunting or farming. The most disturbing aspect is that many of these children don't even realize they're slaves because the practice has been normalized across generations. They grow up believing that certain families are naturally superior and have the right to own others. Some slave-owning families treat their human property relatively well, providing food and shelter in exchange for lifelong labor, while others subject children to extreme abuse and sexual exploitation. The legal complexity is mind-boggling because Papua New Guinea's constitution recognizes customary law as valid, creating a legal loophole that makes prosecution nearly impossible. Government officials who attempt to rescue enslaved children often face violent resistance from entire communities that view slavery as a legitimate economic institution. International organizations working to combat child trafficking focus most of their efforts in urban areas, leaving rural slave markets largely untouched due to logistical challenges and cultural sensitivities. Number 4. There are Papua New Guinea villages where the entire population lives in trees up to 150 feet high because the ground is considered cursed and anyone who touches the earth will die within a year. The Korowai people of southeastern Papua New Guinea have created an entire civilization in the forest canopy, building elaborate tree houses that serve as permanent homes for families who believe the ground below is inhabited by evil spirits that cause death and disease. Here's what's absolutely incredible. These aren't simple platforms but sophisticated multi-story structures with separate rooms for cooking, sleeping, and social gatherings, all connected by bamboo bridges that sway over 100 feet above the forest floor. Children in these communities learn to walk on narrow tree branches before they can properly walk on flat surfaces, developing balance skills that would make professional acrobats jealous. The engineering is so advanced that some tree houses can support more than 20 people at once, and include features like rainwater collection systems, waste disposal chutes, and even elevated gardens where families grow vegetables and soil carried up from the ground in baskets. Here's the truly mind-bending part. When someone dies in these tree villages, their body must be lowered to the ground for burial, but only designated death handlers are allowed to touch the cursed earth, and they must undergo purification rituals lasting weeks before they can return to the canopy. The fear of ground contact is so intense that pregnant women give birth in the trees, and children who accidentally fall to the ground are sometimes abandoned by their families rather than risk spiritual contamination. Modern medical teams trying to help these communities face the impossible challenge of providing healthcare to people who literally cannot be treated at ground level, forcing doctors to develop tree climbing skills and portable equipment that can be hauled up bamboo ropes.